Hi, everybody. I'm Carla, and you are here for What You Don't Know May Hurt You, Achieving Insight and Knowledge Discovery. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Concept Searching, and I've spent probably the last 20 years or so in metadata classification and taxonomy management technology. So what I really do is I write a lot. So I try to provide the strategic marketing direction and then the tactical things that we need to do to move forward in the market. Today, I'm actually really excited because we haven't done a webinar like this in a very, very, very long time. We have Russ Stalters with us, and he is a former VP executive and has used our technology to perform some contact analytics. And what he's going to do a little bit later in the presentation is tell you about how they did it and what were 3 business problems that they solved. So this should be great because it's real world experience. So I'm going to turn it over to Russ for a minute or so, and he can give you his overview.
Thanks, Carla. So I've been involved in the content management, records management, and content analytics space for over 20 years. I actually met concept searching way back when I was the president of TrueArc, which was a market-leading electronic records management firm. And so I'm excited to share some of the experiences we've had and talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we overcame using content analytics. So thanks, Carla.
Sure. I forgot I was moving the slides. Okay, our agenda today, first housekeeping. We will be recording this webinar, and all the people who registered will receive a link to the recording and a link to the presentation. If you do have any questions during the webinar, and you might have some for Russ, please type them into the chat box, and hopefully we will get to them. If we can't answer them today, we will follow up with a response within the next few days. Our agenda is pretty straightforward. I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about who we are, what we do, talk about analytics in general and what we provide, and I'm going to turn it over to Russ, who's going to talk about content analytics from a business perspective and some of his real life scenarios. Then we will have a summary and next steps. So concept searching, I don't know how many of you are familiar with us, or if perhaps all of you are familiar with us, but we have been in business since 2002. We were the first to market with a solution to automatically generate semantic metadata against content, and we are still the only solution in the marketplace with a fully integrated statistical multi-term auto classification platform, which we use to primarily, most people initially buy us to improve their search, but there's a very, very wide use of the technologies really to improve any application that uses metadata. So it's a pretty good bang for your buck. We are a Microsoft partner and have been since 2008. And we are one of only 11 search partners worldwide who is a Microsoft Business Critical SharePoint program partner. Just to make a note too, although a lot of our clients do use Microsoft products such as SharePoint or Office 365, we are platform agnostic and will run on any platform. What do we do? The first bullet is essentially what we do, which is we generate semantic metadata, we auto-classify the content, and we provide the tools to manage and maintain a taxonomy, or in the SharePoint environment, the term store. The second piece of the technology framework is that it is highly flexible and can access content regardless of where it is stored or the format. So we can obviously we do unstructured, but we also do semi-structured as well as structured data. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing something like text analytics or content analytics is what data sources can you use and will they be available? And finally, haha, there we go. So where does all this leave us? Once we generate the semantic metadata classified through taxonomy, you essentially will have an enterprise metadata repository that has been almost automatically generated, and you can then use it to develop and deploy solutions that address really any metadata application challenge, such as declaring records and records management, migration, security is a huge one. So there's an awful lot of things that you can do with it. Just so all of you know, we're sharing a mouse, so I'm trying to get it to work a little faster, but I don't think looking at it will make it move faster. Oh. All right, so why are we different? We have what's called, and it's still unique, compound term processing technology, and that's really our key differentiator. And what that means is it enables the identification and the correct weighting of multi-word concepts in unstructured text. So if we look at the search application itself, traditional search assumes the end user knows what they're looking for, or on the other hand, that they must enter the right combination of words in the right order to get the right result. So a multi-word result through the concept identification is obviously more valuable than single words. So using a really simple example, if we look at the boxes in the middle of the graphic, just triple hard bypass, that is definitely a concept, a topic, subject, whatever you want to call it. But if you take each word separately, like triple could be in baseball, it could mean heart, well, yield baseball. The word heart can mean love, bypass could be a highway. So words have different meanings. So most search engines will return any document that contains any of those three words. So they'll return everything that has the word triple in it, everything the word has the heart in it, every document that has the word bypass in it, which is really not what you want. But when the same search is executed using our underlying technologies, we have the ability to remove the ambiguity, and the result will return a clear search concept. What it also does, which is kind of cool, is it returns any inter or intra-related concepts. So in this example, it would bring back documents that have the word heart attack or pulmonary embolism or stroke, because it has captured the concept within the content and said, okay, now I know what type of concept I'm looking for. Let me see if there's any other documents out there. So is it finally the age of big content? And this is kind of funny, I think. In March, Gartner announced it had renamed Enterprise Content Management, which is known as ECM, which is a nice short acronym, to Content Services, Platforms, and Applications. Well, now they have also decided to rename Text Analytics to Big Content. So it's not really clever, as we already have big data, but I guess that's the best they could come up with. So Gartner defines their big content as content that does not conform to a specific predefined data model. There really doesn't seem to be a definitive name. Some call it text analytics, some call it text mining. There's content analytics. Now we have big content. There is a subtle difference, though, between the analytics, which is typically refers to the analysis of content that shares mutual attributes, as opposed to text mining, which is typically when you're looking for something quite specific. So as far as I'm concerned, I never know what to call it. You can pick the word that rolls off your tongue the best, or use Partner's definition and call it big content. To simplify it, we can put big content into three primary buckets, which is business documents, email, and web content. One of the biggest problems that I see with text analytics, and this is only my opinion, is that I do a lot of research and I do a lot of reading, is that software vendors believe that the only way text analytics could possibly be successful is to essentially stuff the unstructured content into a database field and call it a day. And that infuriates me because there are so many nuances and what we do concepts that you lose if you try to shove it into a database. I went fast. What do we want to get out of our unstructured data? According to Forrester, enterprises use about 35% of their structured data for insights and decision making, but only 25% of their unstructured data. So keep that in mind, that we obviously grossly underutilize our content, but it is, I don't want to say fact because it's actually not a fact, but everyone says that 80% of enterprise data is unstructured. So we're only using about 25% of that. So there's a lot that I think that we're missing, that knowledge assets that we should have access to, but we don't. And what does that cause? I mean, like, how do we know what's going on? If you are a business to consumer company, the voice of the customer and sentiment analysis, if used by your competitors, is probably giving you a run for the money. And I think for the most part, organizations don't really understand what's going on and don't realize that the answers are often found in their contents that they don't even know exists. And really, what you want is, the best approach is to depend on a structured data source and combine it with the ability to interpret unstructured signals, such as our software or our competitor software. So you would want product data, curated content. Stuffing it into that database isn't going to work. So organizations need to commit and continue on a path to consistently organizing the principles of managing content for the organization. So, and actually that's the basis of all knowledge management for years. So, you know, the robots are coming, but they can't create order from chaos. So, not yet anyway. So I'm a very simple example of what are some of the problems that you can run into with text analytics. So why is it challenging? One of the reasons is that there's over 171,000 words in the English language. Since content isn't structured, it tends to be resistant to automated analysis. So we look at it too, it relies heavily on the human language and includes deciphering slang, identifying synonyms, I keep struggling over that word, sarcasm, jargon, irony, ambiguity, anaphora, a host of vagaries not found in structured data. So this is a really simple example that becomes complicated. So would you like a, and you can fill in the blank. Do you say soda, pop, cola, Coke, carbonated drink, fizzy drink, or maybe soft drink? We say pop. I say pop. Other parts of the country say soda. So people may call it by its name, like Coke or something. So when you start using that information in content analysis, you also then lead into the problem of also defining the manufacturer of the carbonated beverage. So Coke, 7-Up, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper. And if you look at ginger ale, it is the name and is also used by multiple manufacturers. Canada Dry probably being the most well known to describe the contents of the product, which is named ginger ale. So when you look at content, it becomes sometimes very difficult to be able to understand and identify, oh, I need this, I need that. So what do we gain from text analytics? The goal is to find relationships in large volumes of unstructured content that were previously unknown. So some people say, well, I can just use search. Well, search is not enough. It helps you discover things you are unaware of, but I think we can all agree that search results often lack relevance. And what it does is it finds documents, not knowledge. And it also has a tendency to overwhelm us with documents that are totally irrelevant. So we also have to sort through all the garbage to find the jewels. Big content, according to Gartner's term, has been relegated to a bucket of voice of the customer and sentiment analysis. But that is very limiting. And I think you'll see that when Russ talks to you about real business problems that were solved. Not that voice of the customer isn't important. But what you want to do is you really do want to solve business problems through the access to content that was previously unknown or known and important to the task at hand. So the basics. Unstructured content is resistant to automated analysis, the nuances of the human language, and falling back on manual classification is not going to do the trick. So a whole host of challenges await those determined enough to get to the value in content. And the way that I look at it, and you don't have to agree, is that text analytics is more of an art, where big data is more of a science. With big data, you kind of know where you're going, or believe you know where you're going. It is finite, is well-defined set of inputs. It's a pick and select operation. With text analytics, you may know you have a problem to solve, but you may not know all the dots that need to be connected, if they exist or where they exist. So if you look at it, text analytics lends itself to discovery and the hopeful aha moment. To me, it's more interesting. Although the two paths can diverge rather dramatically, I would assert that unstructured data offers the opportunity to chart the future, where big data is where we've been or where we are, not necessarily where we are going. So what's the problem here? Why isn't everybody using it? Well, your basic problem that needs to be fixed before you can do any of this is to fix your metadata. Those who do manual tagging, we are human and we make mistakes. And typically metadata is either poor or at best sometimes non-existent. So until you solve the metadata problem, you really aren't going anywhere. So it ain't magic, folks. And I'm going to throw some really interesting statistics at you. 70% of content in file shares is redundant, obsolete, or trivial. 25% of your content consists of duplicates. 10% has no business value. Legal experts estimate at least 69% of your content can and should be deleted. And these two like cut me right through the heart because I write 90% of the time. 90% of documents are never accessed after creation, and 65% are accessed only once. So what does this impact? It impacts really all applications that you can see from the bullets above. But what does it cause? You're keeping all this garbage and useless information. So you're increasing corporate risk, potential loss of revenues, and loss of clients. What we do is we recommend using our tool for content optimization. So it can actually, before the content analytics can start. So it provides the ability to dedo, identify copies and versions of content, declare records that may not have been declared, identify data privacy or sensitive information exposures, as well as identifying the ROT, redundant, obsolete, trivial, and low-value content. So what you end up with is organized content and optimizing high-value content, which helps enable real insight, cleanses the content, offers a defensible deletion with full audit capability, and does a whole lot of things. So actually, most of our customers will always run this and do this, especially too because they're migrating either to Office 365 or doing some type of migration, which helps reduce how much content you're actually migrating. Tidy text. So what we do is we analyze and extract highly correlated concepts from very large document collections. So we would typically run the content optimization first, and then what we would do is create a taxonomy and classify documents, and during that classification apply the semantic metadata. So we would generate essentially our data set that we're going to be using for analysis. And that can include highly granular information. You have a lot more flexibility because you're dealing with content, not very strict data inputs as you would be with structured data. So this also gives you the ability to remove irrelevant content and just the noise of content that isn't appropriate. So as I said, you'd run the content optimization, which actually helps the whole organization, and then you could create a taxonomy that includes the criteria for the analysis. During that process too, we do the entity extraction using natural language processing, and our final step obviously is classifying the content. Information that is related and interrelated will also be identified, so you have a far richer content base from which analysis can occur. Subject matter experts can refine the content sent for analysis, and that's something that I would like to mention. Our products, when they require user intervention, were designed for the business professionals, not for IT. So they're very intuitive, interactive, and even very, very easy to use. So even a workflow process could take a business professional less than 5 minutes to create and test. To create a workflow without a tool is way more difficult and time consuming. So we have a mix of people. We do an annual survey every year, and it seems that at least for creating the term sets in SharePoint, it is a mix of the business professional as well as the IT people. So I have a little use case for you, and this use case was actually a search project, but because of the requirements, it also provided integration of unstructured, semi-structured, and structured data. But the end result gave the end user the ability to extract any type of data or multiple types of data and perform analysis on it. So what was the issue? The company was migrating to the cloud and didn't want to do a lift and shift operation or copy paste of documents because a lot of them were garbage. They needed access from 30 different content sources, the ability to clean up over 19 million documents and migrate the remaining 3 million documents, and classify them against one or more taxonomies. And their final concern was to ensure that no one could access content or data unless they were authorized. So the solution, the migration and analysis of the 19 million documents was actually completed within 2 weeks. And that's, I think, I don't know if these people are working 24 hours a day or what, but they got it done in 2 weeks. The integration and the search enhancements were added, and they were up and running. And with one of the biggest benefits is they were able to reduce their server footprint from 57 servers down to 3. So now the engineers primarily have a specialized search interface that provides access to all of the structured and semi-structured and unstructured data that they have secure access to, and they can do drag or drop or input that information into any type of analysis tool. So really that's what we do, is we provide the cleanup of your content, the ability to create highly granular data sets for analysis, and then we turn it over and say, you use the tool of choice that you are the most comfortable with. And we have, I don't think we have clients who are like even duplicating the same tool. So some of them are not that sophisticated and use Excel, and we have some that are using fancy artificial intelligence tools to analyze the content that we have been able to extract that meets their criteria. And now what I'm going to do, so what you don't know may hurt you. I am going to turn the webinar over to Russ, who is going to tell you how they approach content analytics, and then he's going to be using some real life examples of using the content to solve business problems. So Russ, the floor is yours. Can you please share with us your experience addressing these challenges?
Sure, Carla, thanks. So before I get started into some of the examples, I want to make sure that I share my definition of what I meant by content analytics. And for me, addressing the challenge of managing all the information from the Deepwater Horizon incident, it equals all content, structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. So I include database content. And examples included geospatial data. We had documents. We had emails, scanned paper, databases, images, and videos. So I define it as the ability to find patterns in information using these semantic models or graphical representations of the data that provide new insights from large repositories of information, and that was our challenge. And so for almost 6 years, I led the efforts to manage all this information from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and we used content analytics extensively to support the mission. Some of the key learnings from leveraging this technology were, first, to have a deliberate and controlled data ingestion process, have policies which reinforce the behaviors necessary for effective information management, and then finally, use content analytics to solve real business problems to get buy-in. And so this, to me, is one of the most critical procedures. How information enters the organization needs to be defined, and everyone needs to be briefed and trained. When you're receiving a lot of information, it's one thing to analyze information that's just been sitting there for a while, but when you're bringing in large amounts of information, if it's not controlled and you don't have this deliberate process, you're essentially going to create a digital landfill. And I don't care how accurate, how robust, and how amazing tools are, even technologies like concept searching, if they're trying to analyze garbage data and garbage information, then your results are going to be poor. So this was really important, and we had a set of very specific processes and an application that we built to bring data in and go through a process of onboarding that data. So one of the parts of that process was some data enrichment, and this is where we would do some of that analysis. But also, we needed to extract a lot of the data out of these documents. In our case, because of the amount of money we spent in such a short period of time, we had 1,000-page invoices with several different companies all encompassed in one invoice. So you have one company presenting, a $5 million invoice, but there may have been 20 companies represented and hundreds of different invoices all bundled together in that $5 million. Additionally, we had similar challenges with environmental data, and sorry about that, environmental data, and we had field notes, lab results, and these were from all different types of information: air, water, and sediment samples. So it was a very vast and dispersed set of information. Quality is really important. So like I mentioned, if the information that you're trying to analyze is poor, then your results are going to be poor. So we embedded QA and QC processes as we brought the data on. So one of the key things, Carla mentioned subject matter experts. One of the key learnings was we needed to identify data owners, people that knew the data, understood it, and were involved, actively involved. And as we brought data on, they could review the data and make sure that it was accurate. In some cases, we had to send it back. So these business SMEs really become very important on that front end. And sometimes, like I said, we wouldn't load data, we'd send it back, and we would have to bring it back, bring back a new set of data. And too often what I've seen in organizations is this responsibility falls on the shoulders of IT, and IT professionals in most cases, unless they happen to have experience with a certain data type, will not understand the data and not be able to opine accurately on the quality or the validity of that data. So it's really important to have those data owners and subject matter experts involved. For us, another key component was information and data management governance, and we had to create a response taxonomy, and that's where tools like concept searching really become very valuable, because you can start creating your own unique taxonomy based on the information. And so that taxonomy helped relate things like scientific names to species, or response unique techniques like specific operational terms that were unique to the response, and being able to relate those to other information. And that was very important. And then I mentioned before, one of the ways to improve the quality of the information added by end users is to have clear and concise policies and to ensure consistency of the information. And so these policies really reinforce the necessary behaviors. Now, one of the things I'm going to challenge the listeners of the webinar today is go back and look at your policy in your organization. Ours was less than 2 pages, and it was very directive about what could and could not be stored, and it clearly described the desired behaviors and the unacceptable behaviors. So this is really important when you start considering information that's being added by end users on a regular basis.
Russ, thanks a lot, and I think now you are going to give us some real-world examples of how you used insight and knowledge discovery to solve actual business problems that BP faced.
Sure. So one of the challenges when you try to sell content analytics within an organization is you need to make sure that you're addressing real business problems to make sure that the business stakeholders know why we were able to solve the problems. And this helps build momentum. So one of the challenges that we had to solve, the first example, was supporting financial claims, which was very complex and relied on a large number of data sets. And the adjusters needed a way to understand if the claimant had been compensated by an earlier claims program or had received income from working on the response. So we had to look across all these different unstructured content repositories. And so we were able to provide a consolidated search capability across claims data, financial spend data warehouse, in this financial spend data warehouse, and it consolidated in geographic-based reports so that they could look at it not only in a tabular result, but also in a geographic result. Now, the other challenge was that the claimant loss was determined by so many variables. There were more than a dozen different claims programs over 5 years. And so we were able to use these content analytics to intersect operations and environmental data with claims data to confirm the impact caused by the spill and check the validity of each one of those claims. The second example was analyzing the vast array of environment, operations, and remote sensing data that the scientists needed to use to discover insights from this very disparate set of data. So understanding the impact to the environment was critical for planning remediation projects and to better understand the impacts on the Gulf Coast ecosystem. So much of this data was fully documented and then made available to the researchers and scientists that we put out on a public website. And so a lot of that data was made available to scientists to be able to do further research. And some of the data was empirical, some was not. We had lab chemistry results from water, air, and sediment samples. We had data from observational data like field notes, shoreline assessments, and those included qualitative interpretations, not hard data. And so you needed to be able to pull out these concepts. So making sense of this data across the different domains gave us the ability to better understand the relationship between these data sets.
Okay, I'm back. I had to get off the phone because my little dog was barking for some lunch. So in summary, what we provide is obviously the element of end user tagging and the ability to generate semantic information. We can integrate with all data types and provide access to unlimited content sources. And we didn't really talk about it, but we can also include 2D and 3D images and drawings. We are platform agnostic, and it can be accessed by any analysis tool. And in that last bullet, it shows some of the tools that our clients use. Oops, or that wasn't me, that was Russ. Maybe it was me.
Where did you want it back there?
I totally lost the website. Okay, sorry about that, guys. It's the first time we've ever done that webinar this way. Maybe we'll never do it again this way either. So what are your next steps? If you're really interested in this, let us provide a, we'd be happy to show you a demo of it and get you to the right slide. Okay, so what do you do for the content analytics? You find your problems, gain buy-in, perform optimizations, refine the taxonomy for analysis, and export the tool of choice. You also will have available then all of the technologies that can be for whatever you want. So search, migration, automatic declaration of documents of record, identify and protect data privacy and sensitive information, GDPR compliance, and the list goes on. And I think we have time. I know some of you have asked questions. The question that we got on the registrations, Russ, was what was the biggest challenge to creating the solutions you shared?
So one of the biggest challenges was helping the business stakeholders understand the importance of data ownership and providing data owners or their subject matter experts to be actively involved. For many organizations and for many of my colleagues, this was new to them. In the past, they were relying on IT to solve their problems and weren't that involved. And we made it clear that we would not succeed without their active involvement. And so once we got over that hurdle and really got them involved and helped them understand their role, their critical role in the success of the solutions that we put together in providing that subject matter expertise around the information and the data and the quality of it, it made a big difference. But that was interesting. That was a change for them. They weren't used to that.
Thanks, Russ. So I guess we have come to the end of our webinar. I want to sincerely thank all of you for attending. And again, you will receive a link to the webinar as well as to the PowerPoint. If you have any questions or you want a demo, please feel free to contact me and I will be happy to get you the information that you need. Again, thank you for your time. I realize it's very valuable.